Okay, so it's an early morning here, but I would like to continue working on the shell project. So last time we left off after completing the base stages of the project. So this time I would like to start with navigation. Okay, the PWD built-in. In this stage, you'll implement the PWD built-in command. PWD stands for print working directory. The tester will check if the PWD command correctly prints the current working directory. Command must print the full absolute path of the current working directory. Okay. So I think the context for this is that whenever a process is executing, Linux associates the process with a current working directory, and it provides a system call to get the current working directory. And I think that we're just supposed to print out the result of that system call. So yeah, let's do that. So again, so PWD seems to be a built-in. That does make sense because you're not calling an external program to. You're not calling an external program. It's rather something that the shell itself does. Okay. So I think we can put the code here. PWD. So here we use a system call to determine what the current working directory of the process is. I could be wrong here. It just feels as though I'm slapping concepts onto something that already that could very well not exist. So that is something to consider. But I think I'm right, however. So every process. So what's a process? A process is basically you have a program. A process is an instantiation of a program. And it kind of makes sense that the operating system thinks of things in terms of files. There's a bunch of files that contain data. And then I think that every process is associated with a current working directory. I think that could be something helpful. And the current working directory is the parent folder of where the program is located. So here we need access to the system call that gives us the present working directory. Python working directory. Awesome. So yes, a pathlib seems to be a modern alternative. I've seen references to ChatGPT give references to pathlib multiple times in the even in the previous video. So I think I'm just going to use OS for now because this is something that I'm used to. And OS has been imported, so I think I can just print os.get current working directory. And after that, it's going to continue and print the prompt again. So I think this should work. But however, I just want to predict what the output of this is going to be when I run python app main.py, because it is somewhat confusing to me because the Python file is located within a folder, so but you're running it from outside the folder. So what's the current working directory going to be? Is it going to be the parent folder, or is it going to be the folder where Python was run from? I think it's going to be the folder where Python was run from. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, my prediction was right. It's the folder that Python is run from, and not where the Python code is situated. So the Python process just reads data from this file, and then, but since it's being instantiated in the shell folder, that's where it is. That's where its current working directory is. Okay, great. So I think this works. Oh. Oh no, I think. Okay, so I ended up issuing the git commands from within the shell that I created, which I don't think is going to work because I think these arguments here, I think support for quotes and all are going to be limited. So yeah, I could think about why exactly this is not going to work, but let's not do that. But I think it has to do with quotes here. Add support for PWD. Let's see if this works. Yeah, this is pretty cool actually, how they've got the entire like auto-complete, auto-testing rig to work and get everything just automated. It's very nice actually. Nice. Okay. This is interesting. So it seems like the tests are getting more complicated. So now every time I add a built-in, I need to ensure that whenever type followed by that particular built-in, the built-in is run, it is shown as a built-in. Interesting. This is pretty good. So it seems like the tests are getting more realistic, which is good. So suppose I could just add it here. But again, I feel as though this is actually not the right way to do things. I'm sure that I'm supposed to create variables that are associated with these strings here and use those variables instead. But I think for this particular use case, it doesn't necessarily matter because these are very standard, PWD, type, and echo, etc. Yeah, I think this should do the trick too. But I think, aware that this is, there are other ways of doing this, especially whenever there is a possibility of change. Whenever there is a possibility of change, I think that's where we need variables for each of these commands. Let's test this out. Awesome. Wait, so which NG5? Okay, okay, so I'm sorry. Oh, perfect. Okay. I'll type PWD and PWD app. Perfect. Yeah, this is really cool. Awesome. Let's move on to the next stage. The CD built-in absolute paths. Right, so CD is another built-in. It's used to change the current working directory of the process, of the shell process, absolute paths. In this stage, you'll implement the CD built-in command to handle absolute paths. The CD command is used to change the current working directory. CD can receive multiple argument types. In this challenge, we'll cover absolute paths like user local bin. This stage, relative paths. In this module, in this challenge, okay, so I assume that in the navigation challenge. Relative paths, later stages. The tilde character, which stands for the user's home directory, later stages, okay. The tester will execute your program like this. It'll then send a series of CD commands to your shell. CD user local bin, pwd, CD does not exist, no such file or directory. The tester will check if the CD command correctly changes the directory when a valid path is provided. I assume it's going to do this using our pwd command. It will also check whether the message blah blah is printed if the provided path is invalid. The CD command doesn't print anything if the directory is changed successfully. The tester will use pwd to verify the current working directory after using CD. Okay. So, yeah, let's get started on this. So the first stage here in implementing CD is implementing absolute paths. So let's add another if branch for the CD built-in. And don't forget to add it to the list here. Yeah, it's pretty interesting though. So I wonder if each of these modules were created by different people, or it was created by the same person or the same group of people, which is why so I have an intuition that the tests are getting increasingly involved and realistic. So for example, with PWD, is that one of the tests included type PWD, which is interesting. But anyway, so the format is going to be CD followed by the name of by the absolute path of the directory that we want to change our current working directory into. So I think input contains all the arguments. So I'm going to say path equals input 1. Input 0 is just going to be CD. Great. Yeah, so I'm just wondering what would happen if I CD into a file instead of a folder. Let's try that. So, for example, say uv.lock is, for example, a file. So what if I cd uv.lock? Exactly, it's not a directory, right? So I wonder if they want us to go over that. And if they don't, what's the point of no such file or a directory? Yeah, there seem to be cases here that are actually more complicated than what the simplest case is. But yeah, let's for simplicity assume that you're going to pass a directory. So we're just going to check if the directory exists or not, and then change the directory to that directory. So again, we're going to use a system call to change the current working directory. And our code will depend on how the system call handles invalid paths. So, Python change current working directory. Yeah, just like I remarked last time as well, so pathlib seems to be a more modern way to do these things, which is pretty interesting. So I think in the future, I'm just gonna, in the future, if I'm working on a critical project, I'm gonna probably look into pathlib, look at articles that go over pathlib, because I'm a big fan of like idiomatic ways of doing things. So I come from a Go background where things are very simple, and the entire community follows just idiomatic ways of doing things. And it becomes very easy to collaborate with people on projects. So I think pathlib is something worth looking into in the future. All right, so let's actually work on change directory. So os.change directory path to new directory, okay? All right, but it's not so simple because if the path does not exist, we're supposed to handle that exception. So I'm wondering like whether whether I want to put this inside a try except or first check if the path exists using a different system call. I feel like in terms of efficiency, it's going to be easier if I just put this in a try except block, because I assume that change directory is going to call that system call anyway to make sure that it exists. Yeah, it's a little more complicated than that. Again, change directory might not be doing it, but instead the underlying system call that's wrapped might be doing it. But I think that's going to be more efficient. Try. But this time I'm going to be a little more specific about the exception that I'm catching. And for this, I think I'm going to look at the documentation actually. Just for fun, actually, just to see how to handle the exception for when the file does not exist. Interesting. So I think this is what I want to lean into. File not found error. But why is this in HTML? Right, so again, I don't know where these things are scoped, that is, like, where this is defined. So I'm not sure if I can just use this. So if it's a file not found error, oh, great. Okay, so it seems to be in the top level. I'm not an expert here, but sure. If the file is not found, supposed to bring the path and followed by no such file or directory. Let me just yoink that from the write-up. No such file or directory. Cool. And any other exception? I'm not sure how to deal with it. Yeah, I suppose this is how you deal with multiple kinds of exceptions, and it just picks the best exception among whatever's provided. Yeah, I think that's okay. OS.change directory. Yeah, I think this should work. Yes, I come from Linux where like Alt backspace actually removes the entire word before the cursor, but here like Option backspace doesn't do that, which is very annoying. Yeah, I still haven't gotten used to macOS, to be honest. It is better in the sense that things are like just standard, in the sense that I'm not going to reinstall operating systems over and over again just for fun. So it does save me time. But again, I'm just not as comfortable with macOS as I was with Linux, because I used Linux for a very long time. But yeah, I think I can get comfortable with this too. I think it's mostly the keyboard shortcuts, which are like keyboard, not shortcuts, but rather lack of shortcuts that are annoying. But yeah, it's not too bad. Yeah, it's not too bad. Wow, okay. Isn't it supposed to print no such file directory? Oh, interesting. So it seems like paths in macOS are not case sensitive. Wow, okay. Wow. Okay, so first of all, no wonder this is blue. I haven't used depth strings. Thank God for linters. Wow. Okay, that's very interesting. I didn't know that path names were not case sensitive on macOS, and I'm pretty sure they are case sensitive on Linux. Oh, I'm sorry. Perfect. No such file or directory, and then you print the next. Okay, so this is, on Linux this would exist, but on macOS this does not exist. Okay. So I think this should actually work. Getting relative paths to work is going to be interesting. Awesome. Okay, let's get relative paths working. In this stage, you'll extend your cd built-in command to handle relative paths. As a recap, cd can receive multiple arguments. Okay, so that seems to be a bug. What? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's wrong. Wait, I don't have. Wait, have I actually handled relative paths? Or is it a bug where yeah, I can see it's I can see how it can be a bug. Oh. Interesting. It seems like relative paths work automatically with change working directory. I assume that's because of CWD internally supporting relative paths. Okay, so I feel like I've actually cheated because I think I'm supposed to like work on this as a separate stage. So this module has the separate stages, and I suppose that using change working directory is not what they're looking for. Which is interesting. So change dir seems to handle relative paths by itself. Seems to handle relative paths by itself without any additional input from my end. Yeah, let's just see what ChatGPT says. Automatically handles relative paths. Yeah, so we don't need extra logic or path joining. Python change directory takes care of that automatically. Okay. But why is this a separate stage though? Are they, yeah, so are they expecting us to like somehow use another system call in order to change the, or not use the system call at all? But yeah, so one needs to use a system call to change. I think one needs to use a system call to change the directory. Uh, because that's a facility that's provided by the operating system. It seems to be an operating system abstraction. Maybe they want us to use a system call that is not that does not handle relative paths. I'm just thinking, like, how do I implement this if change directory chdirt did not support uh, relative paths? Yeah, so I would need to basically process the path string, and again, I would use operating system abstractions to process the path string, I think. Yeah, this is very confusing actually. I could look at the forum actually to see what people are saying about this. Because yeah, just to recap, right? Do they want us to somehow do the string processing for a relative path ourselves? Is that a separate? Is that the point of this stage? Yeah, let me just think about how I would do it. So, given a path with relative paths with relative components, how would I process the path in order to get the absolute path that I can change dir into? I think that's the, if they want us to solve a different problem, that would be the problem they want us to solve. So how would I do that? So I think I would take this string, okay, so the string, if it starts with a leading forward slash character, then I would assume it's an absolute path. Well, there itself, there could be cases where there could be double dots inside the path, but if it, but assume that if it starts with a forward slash, it's an absolute path. I just feed it in a change dir. But if not, I get the current working directory and preface it to whatever the thing is. If it starts with a letter, I get the current working directory and then preface the whole thing with whatever it is. And any dots I replace with removing the parent folder. So if it's a /x /y, I would process this string and remove x and put y first. That's one of the things I could do. Yeah, that's kind of complicated, and I don't think that's what they're actually expecting us to do. Well, I would expect the system call to be able to handle that. Yeah. Yeah, it's not that it's difficult. It's just that it's just a lot of work. It's just a lot of like engineering work where you need to handle a lot of different cases. It's just a lot of work. It's not difficult. The logic itself, I assume, is not very difficult. Let's look at the form and see. I don't know what the point of this join is, but sure. Yeah, I'm just gonna move on. I'm just yeah, I have this habit of looping on the same thing over and over again. So I think yeah, this was pretty interesting CD. I think I've got what I wanted from the stage, and I'm just gonna move on and maybe move on to another module after completing the home directory stage. In this stage, you'll extend your CD built-in command to handle the tilde character. As a recap, CD can receive multiple argument types: absolute paths like user, local bin, previous stages, relative paths, dot, forward slash, dot, forward slash, dot, forward slash dir. The tilde character, which stands for the user's home directory, the stage. The tilde character is shorthand for the user's home directory. When CD is received with tilde, your shell should change the current working directory to the user's home directory. The home directory is specified by the home environment variable, cd tilde, pwd, etc. The tester will check if the cd command correctly changes the directory to the user's home directory when tilde is used. The pwd command will be used to verify the current home directory after using cd tilde. The home directory is specified by the home environment variable. Okay. Yeah, so I think a comment about this is that the tilde character is something that is provided by the shell and not the operating system itself, which is interesting. Why can't the operating system just provide it? But maybe for historical reasons, maybe the tilde is allowed in file names. Yeah, I think that there was a situation where I ended up naming one of my files with the tilde character, and that caused, I think that caused an issue where I was trying to access it, but then it took me to the home directory or something of that sort. But sure, so I can think of the tilde character as basically a shortcut for home. As a shortcut for home that's provided by the shell. Yeah, but I have a lot of thoughts about this actually. So let's actually open up a shell here. So let's create a file with whose name is the tilde character. And the reason why this is why I'm doing this is because just to show that it is possible on Unix-like systems to create a file with the tilde character. Okay. So now cat this is going to end up catting the home directory, but that's not what I want. I'm going to cat this, and this is going to ask the shell to escape whatever's inside. Okay, so that's the point of the home directory, which is interesting. Yeah, so I think, what this challenge wants me to take away from this is that every user, okay, so the operating system provides users, and the reason why it provides users is, I assume for security, yeah, it seems like a natural thing to provide. So an operating system has users, that seems to be a natural thing to provide. And files are associated with users, and different users have different permissions, users and groups. That's something that operating systems provide. That makes sense. And every user has a home directory, and that's dependent on the operating system. And it's easier to provide a shortcut to the home directory by using the tilde character. And yeah, I think, yeah, that's an explanation that I'm probably satisfied with. Sure. Okay. But let me remove the tilde character file. Yeah, it's actually a little more complicated than just this because if the tilde character is within the path that's passed to CD, then am I supposed to? Yeah, yeah. One way of implementing this is just to see if again. So here, this doesn't cover cases where you get tilde followed by other things. So I think I'm just gonna replace the tilde character. So in the input, in the past input, I probably want to replace the tilde character with the user's home directory, and that's specified by the home environment variable. And so whatever process starts the shell sets the home environment variable. And environment variable is basically configurations, configuration parameters that the booting up process gives to all the child processes. Yeah, this is so vague. This is just, yeah, it kind of gets the point across, but yeah, things are, yeah, this is kind of like proof that things are like imperfect. Uh, there's a lot of like complexity that we often overlook. But sure, this is probably one of the most. Yeah, I think my gripe with this is that this is not actually the most common use case. The most common use case is CD tilde followed by like a path. Okay, so uh, yeah, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to replace the tilde character in the argument, in the past argument, with the with the value of the home environment variable. Cool. So path. Yeah, another caveat here is that I'm not going to do this if there is a quote. If there's a single quote, I'm not going to do it. If there's a double quote, I don't know. You might have to do it. Might not. Let's think about that later. Um, so what I'm thinking at the moment is whether I should read the home environment variable directly or I should just use a wrapper that Python probably has that does this for me. Again, so this is where things get kind of high level. So in C, I don't have any wrapper functions that encapsulate common system calls for me. But in Python I do, but I'm not sure what the intention of this lesson is. I think it's okay though. I think, yeah, I think I actually want to read the environment variable myself. Yeah, just forget that it's Python. Try to use as minimal abstractions as possible. At least for this. At least for this. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure I didn't do that in the past, for the past stages. So I think os.getenv. Get in the environment variable will return none if it doesn't exist. The optional second arguments can specify an alternate default. Okay, it's probably going to exist. home path equals home, and interesting. Yeah, so I actually installed the Python linter, and this seems to be very useful, to be honest. Yeah. So just to be clear, right now, yeah, no such file or directory because it doesn't exist. Okay, but now after this, interesting. So I think path.replace doesn't modify the original. So what is the point of object-oriented programming if you're not going to replace the original string? Yeah, that seems kind of, I don't know, counterintuitive to me. So in object-oriented programming, a method on the object, I would assume, modifies the object itself, as opposed to returning a new copy of the object with with modified properties. Awesome. So this does seem to work. Yeah, this is actually pretty interesting why replace doesn't modify the original string, but then I do know that strings are a whole different, just this entire unintuitive space in and of themselves, where they talk about, where textbooks talk about immutability of strings as though it's something super intuitive, which is very annoying to me because, again, so just in terms of, I think computer programs should be modeled as the way humans think about things. And immutability, I don't think maps onto the way we actually think about things. And yeah, it's very annoying. But sure. So in the future, if I have a string that I want to modify, I'm gonna have to set the original string to the copy that's returned to the method. Gotcha. And this is actually going to work even better than what they're actually expecting me to do, because I can do this. So I can follow the tilde character with a path after, because I'm replacing the tilde character with the home directory. Okay, great. So I think this works, which is really good. So I've completed the extension, which is awesome. So I think I can move on to the next stage, So I've implemented PWD and CD, which is awesome. So now I can just move on to another module. Quoting seems interesting. Auto completion, pipelines, history persistence. Yeah, I think quoting is going to be pretty difficult actually. But it's going to be interesting, so let's actually work on it. Okay, yeah, let's get started on quoting. I'll implement the first stage of quoting and then take a break. In this stage, you'll implement support for quoting with single quotes. Every character within single quotes is interpreted literally with no special treatment. Read more about quoting with single quotes here. The tester will execute a program like this. You go program.sh. It'll then send a series of echo commands to your shell. Gotcha. Okay. The tester will check if the echo command correctly prints the quoted text. Then it'll also send a cat command with the file name parameter enclosed in single quotes. Okay. Yeah, this is going to be a very difficult stage because, so I assume the idea here is I'm supposed to take the arguments which I initially split based on any white space character and process them such that things within strings within a single quote are all interpreted literally. I think where the difficulty is consecutive adjacent quoted strings. That's one of the difficult parts, and then this here, where if there's no space, it's just everything's concatenated. Okay, yeah, this seems like a big task. Yeah, so let's just take it step by step. Yeah, I'm gonna have to break this down. This is a very intimidating task, but I'm gonna be happy if I'm able to complete this. Echo, shell, echo, world test. Okay, I think I can first implement this simple case and then move on to more complex cases. So if I look at the code, right, I'm splitting the input based on any white space character. So given a particular input, I'm just splitting it on any white space character, which I think is not something I'm supposed to do now. Yeah, I think here, like pulling out my Wacom would help. Good. So, would I have to write my own split function that accounts for single quotes? Okay. Yeah, this feels pretty difficult, but yeah, let me try to do it. Yeah, just to like get my foot in the door, one of the things I can observe is that whenever there are, I shouldn't split. Let me make note of that. Uh, Simple split is not going to work. So I don't think simple splits are going to work because now there are single quote characters in the input. So what I can do is I can do the split myself, where I can go through the entire input string, and if I'm currently in a state where I've seen a single quote in the past, where I've seen an open single quote in the past, then I can append the white space, whatever white space I'm seeing, if there is one, to the string that's being built. And if there is another quote, I can change the current state to be one where the quote is not turned on. But that seems pretty complicated, actually. There should be a better way to do this, a simpler way. But yeah, that is a way to do it, right? Yeah, and it's not particularly hard either. It's just string manipulation, where I'm going through a string and I'm processing it. And I do have abstractions. I don't need to know what white spaces are. So this is one option. The other is, what's the other option? So maybe I can use split in a fancy way, where I can split on single quotes first. Yeah, what if I split on single quotes? But then I'll have to process the resultant list, which could be more complicated than processing the input manually, honestly. I could be wrong though. It could be easier to process the resultant list if the string is split on single quotes. Okay, but it's just difficult to think about. Split. Split on single quote. Okay. I can do both of these. I'm just going to do the first one. It's just simple. It's just simpler. Otherwise, I'm going to keep looping on the same thing over and over again. Better to... And I can look at the solution after and see if there's a better way to do it. But, so here, I've got a... Yeah, let me just write another function. Process input. Yeah, that's very vague, but that's it's about as much as I can do right now. Okay, so it's gonna, so here, this is gonna return a string, of course. Okay, so this is basically whatever we had previously, except that now the entire input processing is abstracted behind a function. This should work just fine, but yeah, let's not check it. I don't think it's, I think checking it might not be worth it. Let's just start implementing the processing itself. How do we do that? So I'm gonna have to maintain state. So the current state is it. I'll call it quote state. So I'm gonna have to go through the input character by character, and yeah, for simplicity, I'm just gonna assume that it's ASCII for now. So for C in input, I think that's how you loop through every character. Yeah, so I think not here should flip it, flip the Boolean value of quote state. Yeah, I'm just having trouble focusing. But I do want to complete this before taking a break, so let's try to do it. So what I'm trying to think about is if C is white space character, if is it's a white space character. Um, yeah, there's a lot of moving parts here, so it's not like readily available to me. The intuitions for these things are not readily available to me, so that's something to. I think I'll get better at as I work more on it. But um, okay, let's just try to develop like a model for it. Here, I'm just like piecing together everything in my head, and that's not working. I need a single thing from which everything else flows. Yeah, thank God for Python. Uh, you can check if a string is only white space character by using that space command. Awesome. Yeah, this could be wrong, but yeah, again, when using AI, it's very important to understand that just to have that in your head that this could be wrong. But I think for common things, it should work fine, and I think a space should be okay. If C is space, but it also depends on the quote state. Yeah, this is very hacky, and especially if the quote at the end is not ended, I think we're gonna run into problems. But sure, I think this covers a lot of cases. But yeah, this is yeah, it's not code that I'm proud of. But yeah, I think yeah, there's something here. I'm onto something here. It's it's something. It represents logic. I think it's logical. So I want to test this function by itself. So I'm just gonna open up Python. Okay, process input there. This is good. Yeah, so I think this is giving you an intuition for how to basically impose structure on strings. Basically, it's pretty interesting actually because there are different symbols that one can use to impose structure on strings, and I think compilers, like the field of compilers and like parsing, and yeah, it seems pretty interesting actually. Just the fact that there is a like very structured way to approach this, where you think about strings as having these different components, and then you kind of parse it into these different components, and then you get structure, and then you can manipulate the structure in order to make sense of the whole thing. It's super interesting, actually. Okay. So I think what this should produce is this entire thing should be one string, should be one argument. Another should be another argument, and then this should be last argument. What about the rest of them? I think the way that I've written it should also cover cases where um, oh, it ends up covering this case too. Okay. I didn't know. Yeah, I feel like it's a very hacky way to do it. Because I haven't thought through why exactly it works in this case. When you have like where you have a single quote within a bigger string, Yeah, I'm just thinking, should I think through this and try to understand why it works in this case? Or should I just run it? Because I'm pretty sure it's going to pass the test cases again. Yeah, so I think here's where I should try to, I should try to value long-term growth over short-term progress. So here, of course, I can get it running, and I can pass the stage, and I can get the much-needed break, but I've got to take the hard decision here, and I've got to make the hard decision here and try to take a step back, try to understand why the code that I've written actually works, and then, yeah, like put off instant gratification for something longer term. Uh, yeah, it prints it out as standard error and not standard output. Interesting. Okay, I'm actually gonna take a break. Um, I'm not able to think through this, and I think, yeah, it's better I take a break, and yeah, I'll be back in 10 minutes. Yeah, so how do I do this? How do I take a break here? Should I just let it run? Is it possible to pause the recording? So if I'm able to pause it, I'll take a 10-minute break and then come back. Or should I just let it run? I think I can just let it run. It's gonna still record. I think that's okay. Okay, so I'm gonna take a 10-minute break and I'll be back. And hopefully once I'm back, I'm able to process this and process how this works. But I'm happy with like the way I'm thinking about it in terms of states. I think that's something I'm onto. That's a good way to think about it. However, yeah, it just seems a little complicated for me to process right now. So I'm just gonna take a break and come back to this. But I think I'm gonna get this working. Yeah. So, all right, 10-minute break. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, that was a much needed break actually. Anyway, let's get started and let's get restarted and try to complete this. Yeah, so I think I'm just flitting between different components of the problem in my head. So I've got to just structure the problem better. Again, it's kind of just kind of annoying because, yeah, I feel like this is actually a simple problem and I'm supposed to like just grasp it, but I'm not able to. But I think that's okay. Um, yeah, just maybe it's just that different people have different are just made differently, and it's good that I'm making an effort to try to understand this. I'm trying to structure all of this in my head. But anyway, so let's move on. And okay, so the problem is you're given a string, and you're basically supposed to. This string potentially has single quote characters, and anything within single quotes you're supposed to kind of all bunch together. But outside of the string, if you see a white space character, you're supposed to separate. You're supposed to basically separate the string into components that are separated by this white space character, and that's how the language works. That's like the definition of the language. Okay. I could have written my own split. So this is essentially split, except that it's not going to work for, except that it accounts for cases where there is a single quote character. So this is split, but then it accounts for cases where there's a it accounts for the special case where there's a single quote character. I think my discomfort is stemming from the fact that split is probably a lot more complicated than what I've written here. Because I'm sure if I were to look at the code for split, given an input string, get a character, do a pin to it. Yeah, I just have a feeling that I'm missing something. But yeah, let me just work through it from, again, I don't need to get everything right, and I don't want to become an expert on split. I could be missing something, and I think it's good to like have that awareness, but I think it's okay. So I'm basically going through everything. So if it's a white space character, if the current, okay, so this is pretty much what split does. Except that split probably takes in like it takes in a big character string as well. A bigger split string as well, but here I'm just accounting for spaces. And then I'm keeping track of whether or not it's a quote state or not a quote state. And then if I see quotes, okay, so let's understand why it works for this case where there are quotes here. So anything between quotes are basically interpreted literally. Okay, but if I didn't want this to be the case, I would every time I saw a quote character, I would actually set cur to not zero and then append that to cur. And that's the reason this works. Yeah, it's not intuitive, but I can see why it works. And I think I should move on. Cool. Okay. Yeah, let me not be compulsive about this. Uh, okay, so one case that I don't think is covered is, so let me just show you an example. Right, so if there's a quote and then there is no ending quote, then it continues looking for input. That's not something that my current implementation is going to do. It's just going to end it wherever it is. So my input is going to just say hi. So there, it's going to say hi there. Yeah, there we go. So multi-line inputs, probably you're going to have to loop back, and then that's a different task. But I don't think this particular stage is looking for that. So implement single quotes. Good. I think this should work, and I hope it does. Awesome. So I've implemented single quotes, which is great. And now I can move on to double quotes. Okay, so this complicates things because there could be a single quote inside something with double quotes, and therefore they could end up tripping up the state here. So that's going to be problematic. So if C equals double quote, okay, this is going to require actually a lot more thought than I'm currently willing to expend right now. I think I'm going to end the stream here. So I've implemented navigation using PWD and CD, and I started implementing quoting. So double quoting is going to be a little bit of a problem because I'm going to have to maintain two different kinds of quote states. And I just feel as though I'm approaching this entire thing incorrectly, because there should be a more structured way to approach this. Yes, I'm going to, so the reason why I want to take some time away from this is because I just want to process thoughts related to all this, because I feel as though I'm taking a very hacky approach to parsing, and that's probably not the best way to approach it. But it does, even though it does complicate things, I think that it's it's worth doing at least once in an unstructured way, just in order to understand and appreciate the value of structuring and the value of like parsing and ASTs, abstract syntax trees. I don't know much about those topics, but I do see the utility of them now, because manually keeping track of everything is an absolute horror. It's a horror show here. Okay. Yeah. Until next time. I'll start with double quotes next time. See ya. Thanks.